Hey guys, Captain Foley with you today. How you doing? Today we're going to be doing Star Trek II, The Wrath of Khan. Quick review on that. So let's get that underway. I just did the motion picture, and hopefully this one is going to be a little bit more detailed, as I know this movie a little bit better than I know the motion picture. And yeah, let's go from there, shall we? So here we go. She's underway. I just want any comments or suggestions you guys have down in the comments below. I'll read all of them. I will try to address them all for future videos. Just let me know exactly how good I'm doing. If you like this video, if you don't like this video, what the situation is. I'm sorry for the flickering. I think it's just the frame rate on my iPad recording it. Nothing I can really do about that, guys, and I apologize. So yeah, so Star Trek II, The Wrath of Khan, the real Khan. No JJ stuff here. I'm going to use these ones instead of my Blu-rays because they got better, to be honest, they have better menu display screens. This is cool. See? Tell me that's not sick. Anyway, there we have Regula. So we're going to start this movie out and do the review. I gotta start off by saying this is better than the motion picture as an opening. At least you have a star field to look at. When the motion picture opens, all you have is the music, a few minutes of it, and just black screen. This, at least you have the star field, you have something to look at. It's a big improvement over the motion picture. Everything about this movie is a big improvement over the motion picture. Just fast forward a little bit here.
14, coordinates 22, 87.
So first of all, this bridge is the bomb. It's one of my favorite refit bridges. Besides Star Trek V, I actually like the Star Trek V bridge. A lot of people are going to want to massacre me because of that, but I apologize. This one is very militaristic. That's because Nicholas Meyer, the director, he wanted more of like a naval submarine feel, and hence these battles are very much like submarine battles, and I think that adds to the realism of Star Trek and makes it a better movie. Nicholas Meyer does a great job with all the Star Trek films he's been worked on. He also does a lot of Sherlock Holmes things, and I'm a huge Sherlock Holmes fan, so I really appreciate that. And it looks like I have a low battery. Anyway, so we are going to go from here. Let's see what we got here. So, first off, they reuse a lot of footage from the motion picture in this movie. First of which would be this, the 3 Klingon cruisers coming in. That's how the motion picture started. One of my favorite scenes in Star Trek, actually, of the Klingons coming in to face the cloud in the motion picture. So they reuse that. They also reuse a lot of the Enterprise and space dock footage. But this movie is leaps and bounds better than the motion picture. Better bridge, better uniforms, definitely. The Magnificent Maroon, as it's called. A lot more militaristic, more like the Navy. It's very well done, and you can thank Nicholas Meyer for that. He had a big influence on this movie as far as design went. So here we see Kirk's quarters. He collects ancient old firearms. I know a few people that actually have this shelving unit. I've seen it quite a few times. It's very futuristic looking, apparently. It's kind of cool to see Kirk's quarters, or his home on Earth, to see how it looks.
I only use it for medicinal purposes. I got a border ship brings me the case every now and then across the neutral zone. Now don't be afraid. 2283. Yeah, well, it takes a stuff a lot for men. Here, give
I can relate to this. This movie is about getting older and realizing your age.
Charming.
I'm turning 40 this year.
400 years old. You don't find many with the lenses still intact.
This is something I need. I need to get Invisalign bifocals now, because I find myself doing this a lot when I'm reading something. I can relate to Kirk here. This whole movie is about getting older and dealing with that kind of situation, which is sadly lacking from JJ's Abomination. But that's another story.
I don't say.
Well, you could say. Thank you.
Thank you.
See, I have this movie memorized because I've seen it so often.
Damn, Jim, what the hell's the matter?
Interesting fact about the Reliant. It was supposed to have the engines on the top, mounted straight onto the saucer section. But when the blueprints or the design drawings were handed to Gene Roddenberry, they were passed over his desk to him upside down, and he signed off on them. And they actually decided to go with it because it differentiates the Enterprise from the Reliant quite visibly. Otherwise, they would look very similar, and a lot of non-Star Trek fans wouldn't be able to really tell the difference between the two ships, but they needed to look like they come from the same family, the same fleet. So the design elements are all there, and it would look cool with the engines on top, but it was designed that way, but they went with the other way, and I think it was a great decision on their part. So that's a little inside knowledge story about that. And of course, every science fiction movie ever made has these flashing lights that go back and forth, back and forth. They make fun of it in Airplane 2, where William Shatner, these lights go back and forth, they have to do something. They're in other Star Trek movies as well, plus a ton of episodes of The Next Generation. So if I see them in another movie, I know for a fact they're in Star Trek 5 in the Shovel Bay. So if I see them, I'll try to mention it, but keep an eye out for those flashing back and forth lights. They're in like every science fiction movie and a lot of episodes of Next Generation. I also got to say, they did a great job of casting. He looks a lot like a cross between Shatner and her. He's got Shatner's hair, but blonde, and he's a great casting job for him. Unfortunately, he's since passed away. He did appear in an episode of Star Trek: The Next Generation, but he passed away quite a few years ago. So it's a sad thing, but as far as casting goes, great job. Definitely looks like he's Carol Marcus and Captain McCoy's, or Captain McKirk's son. Oi! Sorry, guys. Now, the scene where Chekhov realizes what's going on when they find the Botany Bay, and when Khan says, "I never forget the face, Mr. Chekhov." As we all know, Chekhov wasn't actually in the episode of Space Seed, and a lot of people have given this movie shit for that. However, as proposed by myself and my brother, it could be that Chekhov was already assigned to the Enterprise, but he was obviously a lower rank. He hadn't worked his way up, kind of thing, and he had just been assigned. Might have saw Khan in passing in the corridors. Now, whether he would actually have been introduced to Khan so that Khan would know his name is another issue, but that kind of clears up that little error on their part. Botany Bay. Oh no. We've got to get out of here now. Hurry, hurry. I also recommend reading the book To Reign in Hell, about the 15 years that Khan and his people have been on this planet, because it's a very interesting read that fills in the gaps and lets you know how it went from an idealistic planet to this and to their situation. Because when they come back there, when Khan and his men are there, they've just had a major incident happen to them, and that's where the book ends. There's basically a power struggle, and which Khan survived, and that's why they were all together coming back to the cargo containers. So it's a very interesting tie into the book, so, or to the movie. So it's called Terrain in Hell. Very excellent book. I highly recommend checking it out. And Benedict Cumberbatch, I'm sorry, he's British and he's super white. Makes a good villain, don't get me wrong, but he could be any villain. He doesn't, not necessarily Khan. I know Ricardo Montalban is, of course, not a Sikh either, but much better villain, I think. Much better villain. And it's cool that they got the same actor, of course, as from Space Seed. Oh, just another little inside tidbit that not a lot of people know. A lot of Khan's men, well, most of them are actually Chip and Dale dancers that were hired for this movie. Basically, they wanted genetically perfect specimens of man, so they used the Chip and Dale dancers as Khan's men. Just a weird fact that I found out not that long ago, so I thought I'd share it with you guys. That's why a lot of them are kind of like, you know, can't act and don't quite know what to do, but we'll forgive that. But yeah. Okay, so here, poor Chekhov. He's like the red shirt of the Star Trek films, but maybe not, maybe like a pink shirt, because he doesn't actually die. But in Star Trek the Motion Picture, he gets his hand burned. This one, he gets a SETI eel put in his head. Star Trek 3, nothing really happens to him. Star Trek 4, he falls off the deck on the aircraft carrier and almost dies. So since they don't have red shirts anymore, Chekhov's kind of been the one that gets picked on. So, also, Khan's little emblem here, which is the Starfleet Delta, a lot of people wonder where he got that from. Turns out his wife, Marla MacGyvers from Space Seed, she passed away because of these SETI eels. And this insignia was from her Starfleet uniform. He basically had it bronzed and wore it as a necklace. So that's where that came from. A lot of people have asked the question, where does that come from? Why would he have that? That's the story behind that. And of course, the flight over to the Enterprise via inspection or travel pod. Can't just beam aboard. We have to have this dramatic entrance, which is fine with me. I love it. Now watch this scene. Watch Sulu. He had another line there. Any chance to go aboard the Enterprise? And I'm excited or something. I've never seen the rest of that clip. If any of you have, I would like to know what happens, what he says, what he was meant to say. It's not in any deleted scenes. I've never been able to find it. But he's clearly going to say something else. And it's bugged me for as long as I can remember, ever since I was a kid and I watched these. That's another thing. A lot of things I'll point out are things I've noticed for a long time. From a kid's perspective, I'm like, was confused by it, and some of them I've got explanations for, others I haven't. So I just want to bring that aspect to this video as well. Some things that I've noticed with these videos over the years that I just, from a kid's perspective almost. Also, these lines coming up that are in Vulcan were actually said in English. If you watch their mouths. Those lines were said in English because they were going to insert the dialogue later. And if you watch their mouths, of course it is said in English. It matches the subtitles perfectly. So it's just an interesting fact also. They had to make the Vulcan words kind of mesh with the mouth movements of the actors. And this scene here, this little speech between Kirk and this guy, listen to this.
I believe you'll find everything shipshape, Admiral.
Do you have any idea, Midshipman Preston, how many times I've had to listen to Mr. Scott on the comm telling me his troubles? Do you have any idea the ribbing I've had to endure in the officer's mess? To the effect that the Enterprise is a flying death trap?
Oh, no, sir. Well, this is the finest engine room in the whole Starfleet. If the Admiral can't see the facts for himself, then, with all due respect, fine as a Tiberian bat. Sir.
Chipman, you're a tiger.
My sister's youngest admiral. Crazy to get to space.
A young man's fancy.
That scene
I seem to remember it myself.
was not in a lot of the releases of this video. I'm glad they're on this DVD. There's a few scenes that are added that weren't in the normal releases. But when they played it on TV, there would be certain scenes added that weren't on the DVDs, or the VHS, sorry. This one has most of those, which is nice. And of course, this is an epic scene, one of the most watched scenes in Star Trek history, in Star Trek lore, because everybody that builds this goddamn model watches this scene to get paint references. What was screen accurate? What isn't screen accurate? How's the Aztecing supposed to look? What color is supposed to be there? I myself am going to be building the refit, the 350 scale refit, very shortly. I'm going to be watching this scene ad nauseum just so I can see the color schemes that I need. It's kind of hard though when you watch this to like get the correct paint details. So there's a lot of other reference materials I'm going to have to access, but this scene of the ship leaving dry dock, I swear to God, is the most watched Star Trek scene ever. And probably will continue to be so for a long, long time. And here she is leaving dry dock. Awesome scene. Definitely one of my favorites. Once again, I apologize for the screen flicker. I just think it's the frame rate that it's recording at. I've had to make some adjustments to the picture so that I can actually see it pretty well on here. On the screen it's very dark right now, but if it was the regular color that it was supposed to be on my TV, it really washes it out on the recording, so I had to make some adjustments. But I couldn't get rid of that screen flicker. I think it's just the frame rate. So I apologize, guys. Doing the best I can here. And of course, most of these scenes are reused from the motion picture, just so they could save some money, which is perfectly fine. And in this scene, I think that her uniform is a carryover from the motion picture. It looks like pajama wear, like the uniforms in that movie for sure. I don't know if it was an actual costume that they had recycled from the motion picture, but it certainly looks like it. Not that I'm complaining, it looks good, but just a thought that I've had. I don't know if anybody can confirm or deny that fact. I would like to hear your opinion if you know any different. Again, they were only shipping the quadrant in the motion picture when they were on at Earth. I don't get it. They're the only ship in the quadrant so many times. That's why in Star Trek V, Kirk's like, well, there must be other ships in the quadrant. Yes, there are, but we need Jim Kirk. It's just funny how many times there are no other ships in the quadrant. And how lucky is it for Khan that Kirk is not only on board the Enterprise, but that Spock says he can take command. The chances of Kirk actually going to Regula himself to deal with this problem were like almost non-existent. So Khan kind of lucked out in that respect, don't you think? He's an admiral. Chances of him being on a starship are almost non-existent, let alone being the one that gets the call, let alone your first officer, who's the captain of the ship now, saying that it's all right that you take command because I'm a Vulcan. It's just a whole bunch of coincidences that happen to fall into place for it to be Kirk versus Khan one last time, you know what I mean? Just saying. And this scene as a kid, I bugged my brothers about it. Khan's little speech here, well, I'll chase him round the moons of Nebula and that whole thing. As a kid I was like, why doesn't Kirk just fly around all those things? Some of them don't even exist. Just a funny little anecdote that as a kid I didn't understand. maelstrom and round perdition's flames before I give him up. Just saying, as a kid, I was like, why doesn't Kirk fly around all those things? And then Khan will stop. I must have frustrated the crap out of my brothers. Little known fact too about this. See this stuff on the side here? And all this? Well, it's all CG. This is one of the first movies to have this long of a CG animation in it. I forget exactly how long it took them to do this CG, but they didn't think they'd have it ready on time because the computing power it needed to do this at the time was pushing it. So not only is this over here CG, but this whole thing with the torpedo going in and terraforming this planet took them quite a while to do, and they didn't think it would be done or look good for the final product, but it turns out very well. It's one of the first and best examples of CG in movies ever used, so it's worth noting that at least. I think it looks pretty good. I couldn't do that now with my computer, so got to give them some kind of credit.
A living, breathing planet capable of sustaining whatever life forms we seek them to deposit on it.
Here's some of those dumbfounded Chippendale dancer looks that I was talking about earlier. Not the best actors, is all I'm saying. So we're coming to the battle scene. There's a few issues I have with the battle scene. We're going to get to those in just a second. More dumbfoundedness. Look. Kirk, my old friend. You know the Klingon proverb that tells us revenge is a dish that is best served cold. It is very cold in space. So, epic moment in Star Trek history, of course. This is damn peculiar. Sorry, I just know this movie so well. I just love it. So this is cool seeing them go to yellow alert, charging all the weapons, getting things ready. Because if you play games like Starfleet Battles, etc., yellow alert charges your weapons. Get your shields at standby. And now we have to switch to red alert because we got to put our shields up and get ready to fire. Okay, so they get hit pretty brutally along the engineering hull there. You see where they're getting hit though? Secondary hull. Long line along the engineering hull. I'll make a point about this in a second, so just pay attention to where they're getting actual battle damage. Yeah. Engineering guys. Okay, I'm just going to pause. Take a look at the damage report. Here's where they got hit. Right there, along main engineering. I can see a little bit of damage trickling to the other side of the secondary hull. That's totally 100% legit. The damage up here, not so sure about. Pieces maybe flying off and hitting the saucer, I don't know. And I'm not 100% sure that it would actually go all the way over there. We've got damage up on the, there's the secondary hull damage, which makes sense. There it's showing a lot of damage on this side, which I can't see there being that much damage to that side. And of course there is the damage to the bottom of the saucer section, the bottom a couple decks. Don't know how that happened. Probably from debris flying off of this would be my guess. Yeah, that's tough. I don't know. There seems to be too much damage there than what actually just occurred. But we can overlook that, I guess. And wham. Now, where did that hit exactly? I'd like to know. Probably shields, hopefully, because there's no other damage. The bridge apparently is pretty messed up. So this again is Nicholas Meyer doing like a very submarine type battle. Where they attack, go around for the kill, come back. Red lights, very acrid atmosphere. Very naval in its execution, this whole battle scene, which I think is what makes it work. Makes it very realistic and something that translates well to the screen. Then of course there's this scene, which is the bane of every Star Trek fan's existence. The mystery of the moving bloodstain. If you don't know what I'm talking about, I'm about to explain it. Just put his hand on his tunic. The handprint is there, it's a visible handprint. It's also right near the black trim, near the bottom of the white square. If you'll notice, right near the bottom. And it does look like a handprint. When you see him enter the bridge, the bloodstain has migrated up to the middle of the white square, and it doesn't really look like a handprint anymore. We'll get to that in a second. Just gotta show you. See, there it is, right near the bottom, near the black trim. Important to note that. More flashing white red lights. Again. See, there we have the other side of the ship. There's no visible damage. So I don't know if the phasers that hit the other side went through a couple of decks or whatever to the other side of the secondary hull and didn't come out the other side. If it's just internal damage that's going on there. It's possible. It's possible. And see, look, the bloodstain is now way far away from the black trim. It's up near the top, or the middle, sorry. I do have the Art Asylum Diamond Select Kirk with the bloodstain on his tunic. But what I think would be really cool is if they made a lenticular one where you could like tilt it and the bloodstain would actually move, because that is an epic Star Trek oops. So yeah, a lenticular little bloodstain that actually moved, I think would be awesome. It would sell really well. And I think somebody should do it. I'm just giving you that idea. You feel free to take it, but I think it would be awesome. I would definitely buy that toy. This part where they're exploring Regular One, as a kid, something occurred to me. Dr. McCoy gets startled, or somebody gets startled by a rat. And I was like, what the hell is a rat doing on a space station? Doesn't seem logical. But my brothers, of course, point out the fact that it's a scientific research station. So maybe they have rats as experimental, like experiments? I don't know if they still experiment on rats in the future. There we go. See, it is. There it is. So it is McCoy. That kind of confused me, and why it would be roaming around a space station. You would think that you wouldn't have a rat on a space station. But anyway, what did it do? Like slip into a transporter beam and beam on with somebody? Or is it, like my brother suggested, an experiment? And why are they still experimenting on rats in the future? Especially on a starship where the space station where they're working on the Genesis device. If anybody has any suggestions, please let me know. And the gentleman that plays Captain Chirel, I don't know if you guys know this, but he's in the Next Generation episode. I can't recall what it's called, but it's Darmok Engelad at Tanagra. He's the captain of the other ship that Picard is on this planet's surface with. It's the same actor. Don't know if you guys knew that. Another thing a lot of people pointed out is that these communicators are way wicked huge compared to like the original series. Why wouldn't they be smaller? Those are field communicators for long distance range. They know that they're going to a space station and possibly to a planetoid. So he's got to transmit through even the jacket. It's an away team jacket, field jacket, and it's a long range heavy duty communicator. I actually have one of those. I got it for Christmas. They're really cool. I did a video on it. If you want to go back and check my earlier videos, I do a little bit of a video blurb on it. But yeah, it's for long range communications, and they're transmitting through like from inside of a planetoid or an asteroid, anything like that. It's boosted signal, a lot more rugged. It's designed for a rough away mission. Then there's a chance to get away from it all. Smart ass. I don't know if you guys know about the ranking system for these pins on his shoulder. They are year pins. They also have them on the sleeves of the regular uniforms. The round ones indicate, I believe, 5 years, or the long ones are 5 years, and the other ones are 1 year. So they're basically how long they've been in the service. So if you look at Kirk there, I think he had 4 or 3, I don't know, 3 10-year pins, so 30 years. I'd have to look it up in the technical manual again, but those pins on the sleeves and on there represent how many years of service they've been in Starfleet. And here, interesting fact, the most famous ear in Star Trek is not Spock's ears. It's actually Chekhov's ear. It's a huge ear, about 10 feet. Biggest ear in Star Trek history, where they push this thing through. So it's a big set piece of a human ear. Largest ear in Star Trek history. Just a little interesting fact. You're still alive, my old friend. Still old friend. You've managed to kill just about everyone else, but like a poor mouse, you keep missing the targets. Awesome scene.
You've got Genesis, but you don't have me. You are going to kill me, Khan. You're going to have to come down here.
You're going to have to come down here. And I've also noticed that this guy's clothes behind him looks like an ice cream cone. That's always bugged me too, as a kid. I saw it as an ice cream cone when I was a kid, and I still see that. It bugs me. Just saying. She left me. She left her. Ruined for all eternity. Center of a dead planet. Buried alive. Buried alive. God. Only Kirk could yell so loud that it echoes in the vacuum of space. Awesome scene. Sorry, I just looked it up. The year pins on their uniforms, the long ones are 5-year pins. The little ones are 1-year pins. So if you look, I think Kirk's got 5, 10, 15, 20, and then like 4, 5 1-year pins. can't remember exactly how many he has, but just notice that the long pins are 5-year pins and these small ones are 1-year pins. Okay, it's important to know, just a little fact, that you guys can, when you're watching Star Trek, look at their sleeve and know how long they've served in Starfleet. Something I thought you guys might. Something else I gotta say, in defense of JJ's Star Trek, JJ's Carol Marcus is way hotter than this Carol Marcus. And the British accent makes her a lot more sexy too. Taking nothing away from her. She's a good looking older woman. But, telling you, that's one thing JJ got right. And that's hard for me to say, because I'm not a big fan of JJ's Star Trek. So, because it was bugging me so much, I had to rewind and check out how many years Kirk's been in service. And if you look at his rank or his pins here, he's got 1, 2, 3, 4 of the 5-year pins, so it's 20 years. And then 3 1-year pins. So 23 years of service at the time of Star Trek 2. Just thought you guys might like to know that. Okay, this scene that's coming up kind of bugs me. Sure, they used the Genesis device to create this in the center of this asteroid. But I have one very important question. Where in God's name is this sunlight coming from? Is there a sun down there? Did they create a sun, or is that just a really powerful fucking light? Is there a sun down there? That's what I want to know. That's just crazy. Just saying. This scene coming up. This scene right here, listen. That young man, he's my son. Fascinating. And Spock's voice just sounded like, with all the people you've had sex with, it's about time we ran into one of them. He kind of has that tinge to his voice when he says that. That scene was only shown when this was on TV. It was never in the VHS releases of this movie, so I'm glad they included it in this one. This scene, watch this guy. Perfect example of the Chip and Dale actor. Really? One of my favorite scenes, though. Every time I see something that I've been looking for, I'm like, there she is. There she is. I know, I'm strange like that. This is one of the best space battles ever filmed. Epic. Awesome. Not just Star Trek, science fiction. Ship to ship. And once again, this is Nicholas Meyer making this a lot like submarine warfare, where they can't see each other. They have none of the fancy technology. It's just going by intellect versus intellect, strategy versus strategy, skill versus skill. I love how he did this. That's one of the reasons this movie was so successful, I think. See, red photon torpedoes. If you watch my video about the motion picture, when they're in the wormhole and they need to destroy the asteroid, they fire a photon torpedo and it's blue. I don't know if that's color distortion from the wormhole, whatever, but it's just one of my little pet peeves and foibles I've noticed about the motion picture. So check out my motion picture video. And look, it's a space yuppie. He's got his sweater around his neck. See, this whole cat and mouse game they're playing is very submarine-esque. World War II, being quiet, listening for any kind of sound. No shields, no locking on for weapons. So it's very primitive battle, and the nebula gives it that underwater look and feel as well. I think that's why this was so successful. In this scene coming up, we see more phaser damage to the Enterprise. Right along the torpedo launch tube there. And this is one of the things that's always bothered me about. Look where they get hit. Right behind the bridge. One thing that's always bothered me about starship design in Star Trek, why is the bridge sitting right on the top of the saucer section? Exposed, vulnerable, the shields are down, it's a perfect target. One shot to that with a phaser, boom, the whole other ship's command crew is dead. It would make more sense to have this bridge in the center of the saucer section, or the secondary hull even, like the auxiliary or emergency bridges, because it's a lot less likely to be hit by damage. Just one of those things. And I hope J.J. Abrams watches my videos, because I want to take note. This is how an engine room should look. Not like a goddamn brewery, or like a particle accelerator, or whatever the fuck he's got going on in his movies. This is how an engine room should look. Okay. I got a little bit of an issue with this part coming up. As soon as the explosion happens, the nebula's gone. All you see is Starfield now. That's a pretty instantaneous sucking in of matter. I understand that the Genesis device needs matter to create. So it would have sucked in all the gases and whatnot from the entire nebula. But would it have happened so fast? Not so sure. Also, are there enough resources there to make a planet out of nothing? Just ionized gas?
Oh my God, Karen, look at it.
There it's forming a planet. The next issue is they didn't select a planet that was close to a sun.
Well done, Scotty.
Assuming that that's Regulus, where Regula 1 was orbiting, let's say that's what turns into the Genesis planet. Was it the correct distance from a sun? Was it in a solar system? If this is not near that, which I assume it wouldn't be, is there enough material to form a planet? If there is, what about a sun? The planet would be ice cold if there was no sun within that certain sweet spot distance. Things that make you go, maybe JJ isn't the only one that kind of messes up. The only problem is, I'm willing to forgive this kind of stuff because everything else is awesome. There's a lot less scientific inaccuracies in these than in JJ's, and that's one thing I really can't excuse on JJ's part, is the scientific inaccuracies. There are a few here, and that's why I'm pointing them out. I want to be devil's advocate. Like I said, I have respect for JJ. He's a good artist. He's a talented man, a visionary, but he should not have been given the reins of Star Trek. Check out my video, JJ's Star Trek Sucks, and here's why. There's 2 of them, and talk about each movie. And that's what I'm doing with these also. I'm going back and I'm looking at things that, don't make sense or are kind of wrong. Like nothing is perfect. Even real Star Trek isn't perfect. JJ's is a lot less perfect, that's all. And of course the death scene here. It's very sad. Of course we've known these people for 20 plus years. They have a friendship. We have a relationship with them, watching them. Then you just get thrown into JJ's Into Darkness. We've hardly known the characters. They've hardly known each other. They've only known each other for a few years. It's kind of ridiculous that there should be that bonding there, and you should actually care about that. This we care about. Of course, Spock's funeral. It's very sad. I don't know if you know, but Saavik, right here, she is part Vulcan, part Romulan. Half Romulan, actually. Which might explain why she's crying. I don't know if you guys knew that Saavik was half Romulan, but she is. There's a few books that talk about it, actually, so that might be why she's crying. I've always wondered why a Vulcan would cry at this part, but it is a pretty sad moment, so who's to say?
Of all the souls I have encountered in my travels, his was the most human.
Wait, would that not be insulting to Spock? Because there have been times where McCoy said, "We'll make a human out of you yet," and Spock's like, "I see no reason to stand here and be insulted." So why would you say that at this guy's eulogy? Like, that's kind of rude and disrespectful to him, wouldn't you think? Just saying. Shouldn't have hit the button there, because watch this. When they launch him, he goes around Genesis, and it's legit. He would get caught in the gravitational pull and get sucked in. Cool. I'm all for that. But I have a question. Where the fuck does this sun come from? Did the Genesis device create a sun as well for this planet? Or are we to believe that there was a sun within the perfect distance of a nebula that would be able to sustain this planet? In this scene here, when I heard that DeForest Kelley had died, I watched news broadcasts about it, and I thought this would be an ideal clip for them to play. Where DeForest Kelley says, "He's not dead, you know, as long as we remember him." I thought that'd be epic for them to play on the newscast. They didn't. It would make a fitting tribute that he says that, because it's true. DeForest Kelley is not dead as long as we remember him, and we always will. There's Dr. McCoy.
He's really not dead. As long as we remember.
I think that would be very appropriate. Don't you?
It's a far, far better thing I do than I have ever done before. Far better resting place I go to. And I never know.
Was that a bomb?
Something Spock was trying to tell me.
My birthday. You okay, Joe? How do you feel?
There you have it, guys. There's my Star Trek II review. It ain't perfect, but it's damn close. A lot better than JJ's. And of course we have hope that Spock will return because of this last scene. And the fact that we have Leonard Nimoy saying space, the final frontier, at the end. So thank you guys for tuning in. Please like and subscribe to my channel. I have a lot more Star Trek stuff, a lot more planned, a lot more on the go. We're starting the build of my 350 scale Enterprise refit soon. And I'm going to be doing more videos like this on each of the movies. I hope you got something out of it. I hope you liked it. I hope it wasn't too long for you. And I hope you come back. So this is Captain Foley saying live long and prosper. I will talk to you very shortly.